Jesus Christ. Can anything else go wrong? This feels like the worst period of my life with no end in sight. Surely things can't keep spiraling downhill. I need to catch a break at some point. Work has become a daily struggle for survival, and the one person I trusted the most is now causing me the greatest grief. Let me explain how this all began. I, Jim Anderson, met my wife Kate on my first day at Chisholm Engineering. I was 18, nervously starting my job a few weeks after finishing my A-levels. Although I did well in school, college wasn't for me. I was done with education, and my parents couldn't afford university fees. Kate was the human resources assistant handling the company induction, and she was stunningly beautiful. It took me 3 months to gather the courage to ask her out, fully expecting a gentle rejection. To my surprise, she said yes and asked where we were going. I was so sure she'd say no that I hadn't even planned anything. Fast forward 20 years, and we both still work at the same company. We've been happily married for 18 of those years. I lead the project management team, and Kate has climbed the ranks to become the director of human resources at our sizable engineering plant. Everything was fantastic. We had 2 wonderful kids, Amy, 16, and Jack, 14, both doing well. We had a lovely home and a comfortable lifestyle. John Newcomb has been my best friend since primary school. In high school, we started hanging out with Rob Turner, and Rob's younger brother Paul joined us a few years later. Paul was the only bachelor among us. The rest of us were married, and our wives were close friends. Paul was more career-focused than the rest of us. I recommended him to our company, and he was thrilled to land the director of operations role. It was a high-paying job, and we celebrated his success. Paul mentioned he was surprised to get the job since Mr. Chisholm had given him a tough interview. 6 months later, the 4 of us were having a few pints on a Friday night when I mentioned Kate had been acting a bit off and distracted recently. I thought the other wives might have mentioned something to my friends, especially if it was medical. But nothing had been said. The guys were concerned and agreed that it was unusual for Kate. I admitted that the thought of an affair had crossed my mind. The guys didn't believe it could be true and asked what made me think that. I had trouble explaining, other than something just felt off. Paul hadn't said anything until he suddenly launched into a passionate defense of my wife. He insisted that since he worked with Kate, he knew there was no way she would ever look at another guy, and called me an idiot for even considering it. His reaction was almost a rant, which I found very strange. His defense was too vehement. When I looked around, I wasn't the only one surprised. I remembered that Paul often flirted with Kate, with lots of jokes and small touches. Since working at the firm, they'd been away on a couple of business trips together. I stared at him, trying to piece things together. He didn't react, but started to look guilty and hyper-agitated. Rob, who knew him best, picked up on it too. He looked at his younger brother. "Please tell me you're not that stupid." At the same time, I nearly shouted, "So when did you start screwing my wife?" Chaos erupted. We both stood, and I tried to attack him. John and Rob barely managed to keep us apart. Rob dragged his younger brother outside and told him to leave. "But I'm your brother," Paul protested. "I mean it. Get out before I kick the crap out of you myself. You stupid, arrogant prick." John and Rob tried to calm me down, suggesting it might not be as bad as I thought and that I needed to talk to Kate to find out the truth. I agreed and trudged home. When I got there, Kate was sitting at the kitchen table, crying. "I take it Paul called to warn you then. Is it true?" I asked. Kate didn't deny it but downplayed it, claiming it wasn't an affair. She said they had messed around on a business trip. I dug enough to confirm that messing around meant sex. She swore it was a one-time, alcohol-fueled mistake, but I wasn't convinced. Paul's vehement defense of her made it feel like there was more to the story. I'll admit my reaction was unyielding. I didn't care if it was once or 100 times. Cheating was cheating, and I was completely blindsided. Kate couldn't explain her actions, and her apologies felt meaningless. In the following months, we separated and headed for divorce. That was bad enough, but to make things worse, Kate started seeing Paul again. That pretty much confirmed my suspicion that there had been more to it than a one-off. My pints with John and Rob stopped, it was awkward with their wives being friends with Kate. They did ask, but I wasn't in the mood for company, and I had little money to spare. I also assumed they'd be socializing as a group, especially with Paul being Rob's brother. Losing your wife to one of your best friends was a miserable experience. It felt like I had divorced my whole life. Kate won custody of our 2 kids and kept the house. I knew Paul spent time there, and despite that, I was still paying for half of the mortgage plus child support. All I could afford was a dingy flat in the worst part of town. That didn't help with the kids. They weren't keen to stay over and wanted to be with their friends who all lived near our old house. At first, I took them for days out, spending any spare cash I had on trips, which we all loved and had done regularly since they were little. Then timing conflicts started. They were going on a city break with Kate and Paul, then a school trip away, then staying over with friends. It was an endless list of excuses. In the end, I had hardly seen them for the past 2 months and missed them terribly. If it wasn't for their sports, I might have lost touch completely. I had always covered their sporting events and coached them both in football. Kate never attended, preferring to give herself some downtime, but now both she and Paul attended everything. At halftime during Amy's football match, I asked Kate why she was there. She got indignant, saying they were her kids too. "You never bothered before." "Well, I thought it would be good for the kids to show support during our breakup. As long as you're doing it for them and not for yourself or to prove a point. You wouldn't do anything as shallow as trying to rub my face in it with your boyfriend." "Don't be ridiculous. We're finished, and I have no interest in you at all now." As she said that, she stepped inside Paul's arm and cuddled up to him. I walked away, biting my lip for the umpteenth time. Work was torture. I had to see Kate and Paul regularly. The worst part was the never-ending barrage of comments from Paul's team. They seemed to enjoy baiting me. I knew they were looking for a reaction, and I managed to keep my temper in check, just. Thankfully, my team was a saving grace, especially a new hire named Josh. He was ex-military, in his late 20s, and had lost both legs. He didn't explain what had happened, so I didn't ask. Depending on his level of pain, he either used artificial legs or shortened versions he called stubbies. He was really reserved and quiet, mostly keeping to himself. But when it came to logistics, he was a Jedi master. I had never known anyone who could retain so much information and respond to complex changes so effectively. One day, he surprised me by quietly asking why I was putting up with so much shit. I tried to explain my tales of woe and the crap in my life, immediately feeling stupid given everything he must be dealing with. He looked at me with a serious expression. "It comes down to a simple choice: get busy living or get busy dying." "Did the military instill that in you?" I asked. He started laughing uncontrollably. "Not a chance, it's far too profound." It's a quote I ripped off from the film Shawshank Redemption. The British infantry version would be, "Just get on with it, you wanker." I joined in with his laughter, realizing it had been months since I'd had a good laugh. I finally saw a bit of light at the end of the tunnel when Marie, an accountant for the firm, asked me out. I hadn't even thought about dating, and she took me by surprise. I had known her for years and knew she was divorced. She was a lovely person. We dated a few times before Kate got wind of it. I heard rumors that Kate was calling her a slut, but I couldn't prove anything. Marie came over to meet the kids, but they were absolutely horrible. They ignored her at first and then repeated their mother's opinion of her. I was mortified by their behavior and told them so. Marie, being a gentle person, got really upset and insisted on leaving despite my apologies. I told the kids to go home to their moms while struggling to contain my temper. I called Marie numerous times. When she eventually picked up, she explained that she didn't want to cause any problems with my family and that it was better to call it off now rather than later. I was absolutely gutted. I felt done. No matter how hard I tried to do the right thing, I got shit on from a great height. I might as well give up. Then Josh's comments came back to me. I was trying to find some positives in my life when Amy informed me that Paul had promised to buy her a car and driving lessons for her 17th birthday. I was furious, but said that I would need to discuss it with her mother first. Amy stomped off in another huff. I called Kate, asking how our 16-year-old daughter was about to own a car without me knowing anything about it. You know I wanted to teach the kids to drive, and I certainly don't want her owning a car yet, I said. Why not? It's a lovely thing for Paul to do. Don't be upset just because you can't afford it, Kate replied. So you'll be happy with her driving around to parties with her friends? Do you have any idea how many road accidents involve kids that age? I wanted to ease Amy into things, just let her use our cars until she was more mature and we could trust her. Oh, well no, I hadn't thought about that. I guess that would be a worry. And since when do I get cut out of all the decision-making involving our kids in favor of your boyfriend? I am their guardian. Wrong, we both are. You just happen to have custody. You'll be telling me that fucker wants to adopt them next. Don't be ridiculous. I agree we should have asked you first. I will tell her we won't do it. Great, so I'll be the bad guy again, ruining her chances of a car, and Paul stays the hero. Are you two deliberately trying to cause problems between me and Amy, or is it just a gift you have? Of course not. Paul is just trying to be supportive and bond with the kids. Tell him to back off. He has you and seemingly my kids, but I am their father. I have a right to be included in these decisions. I'm sorry, okay? Those words didn't match your tone, which sounded disdainful. How many times are you going to apologize after making selfish decisions? Try changing your actions instead. Think about someone other than yourself. You and Turner are certainly meant for each other. You're like two peas in a pod. What is that supposed to mean? You sound jealous, Jim. You were the one who left me, remember? If you hadn't, we would still be making these decisions together. And you were the one who cheated. It's pointless bringing that up again. We need to do what's right for the kids. I don't want them spoiled. They should earn things and be self-sufficient. Amy can get a part-time job if she wants to save up for a car, and then we can help her, not just give her everything on a plate. I was angry with Kate's comment about not being able to afford to help. That was because I was still paying the mortgage and child support. It was infuriating, especially seeing as Paul seemed to be spending a lot of time there. Trying to deal with Kate was like repeatedly banging my head against a wall and getting the same result. I saved up everything and reckoned I could just about afford it. I phoned Kate to make sure the kids would be there on Friday for the weekend pickup. Surprise, surprise, they had a trip arranged and forgot to tell me. I had to threaten her with family court before she agreed I could come over on Friday to see them before they left on Saturday afternoon. Standing in our old kitchen, I remembered happier days. The kids sat at the table, and Kate stood at the bench just like old times. I suggested a holiday, the one we had planned as a family for years, a road trip through Europe in the summer. Amy had wanted to see as many European capital cities as possible, while Jack wanted to do via ferrata climbs and adventure sports in the Alps. It wouldn't be cheap, but I was willing to spend everything I had and borrow the rest. The kids were enthusiastic and started talking about the different places we could visit. At last, a positive. They responded just as I'd hoped. I saw Kate looking thoughtful. That was supposed to be our family holiday, Jim. We planned it together. Well, we can't do it together now, and it's probably the last chance we get before Amy is away holidaying with friends. Just then, Paul came into the kitchen like he owned the place. Jack excitedly told him about the trip. Paul nodded and said it sounded great, then added, I guess we can do our holiday another time. All three turned to him in unison and asked, what holiday? Well, I was thinking of a summer-long trip across the United States. You picked the route, but it could include Disney, then jumping across to the West Coast, doing LA and the Pacific Coast Highway. Amy interrupted, oh my God, that would be an amazing trip. Could we do New York as well? Don't see why not. We could call in there for a few days to break up the flights back to Blighty. Jack was straight into questions about the rides at Universal and if they could go to Busch Gardens or a Six Flags park. He loved all the thrill rides. I never hated a person more in that moment. He knew he had me. I could hardly insist on a lesser trip when they were so excited. I stood and walked out of the kitchen, doubting anyone noticed me leaving. I had just gotten to my car door when Kate caught up with me. Jim, I am sorry about your trip. Answer me one question truthfully, Kate. Is that the first you've heard of this holiday? Well, yes. I don't think Paul had the chance to tell us about it. I am sorry it conflicts with your idea. Jesus, Kate, you're not that stupid. He just made it up on the spot. I can guarantee nothing is booked. He is taking my kids away from me, and you're helping him. What did I do to deserve that? I'm sure it's an innocent clash. I'd finally had enough. You keep saying sorry and then do the exact same things over. So here's what is going to happen. Tell your boyfriend this: the next time I have the slightest issue with access or being excluded from parenting my children, I will take the matter up with him directly. Are you actually threatening us, Jim? Talking to you is like pissing into the wind. So, yeah, I'm trying a different tact and will live with the consequences. You wouldn't hurt us. Maybe not you, though you deserve it. He, on the other hand, is due some payback. You and he should think carefully before you put someone in a position with nothing to lose, and that's exactly where you've put me. I looked up to see Paul standing at the door. I half expected him to attack me. He was bigger, after all. But he just scuttled back inside the house. I saw the disappointed look on Kate's face, but she covered it quickly. There you see, a real man doesn't resort to threats of violence. No, he runs away, it seems. I calmed myself, looking back at Kate. Are you trying to win their affections and alienate me? They are my kids, not his. I'd like to think I'm a good dad. You should want me involved instead of playing pathetic games. Kate seemed to have lost the ability to speak. It's not, you are. This shouldn't be a competition, but let's admit it, you've won, I've lost. You got the house, the money, our friends, the rich boyfriend, and the kids. Your winning doesn't mean I have to lose every time, Kate. The old Kate would have realized that well before me. She just stood there open-mouthed, not saying a word. For God's sake, I give up. I want to talk to the kids again tomorrow without the fuckwit in attendance. I jumped into my car and sped off, leaving Kate standing there looking like a goldfish. I made sure Turner wasn't there before I went in. The kids slumped down on the couch in our old living room, looking as if it was a great effort on their behalf, while Kate stood at the doorway. Don't worry, I won't take up much of your time. No verbal response, but Jack managed to look up at me. I know the breakup is hard for you both, and I wanted to remind you how much I love you. So does your mom, that will never change. Kate looked surprised that I had included her. But I don't know what is happening with you guys. I can barely recognize you these days. You're great kids, but now you've developed this snotty attitude like nothing is good enough. I love you to bits, but I deserve better than to be messed around. If you want to move on with your mom and Paul, I will back off. If you want stuff and big holidays, then Paul is your man. What I won't do is show up every weekend to hear some lame excuse about you being busy. Kate tried interrupting. I hardly think. Yeah, well, I've heard enough of what you think, and I am talking to my kids potentially for one of the last times. I can't buy you the things he does, but I'd still like to spend time with you both, do sports, go camping, whatever it is you want. I know it's not Florida or wherever, but it would be us together, and you'll both be off to college in no time at all. Still no response other than looking awkward and fidgeting. The way you guys behaved with Marie was unforgivable. What gives you the right to treat someone in that manner? That is not how we brought you up. I have never been so embarrassed by my own family. I hope you're all happy. She won't have anything to do with me. Kate riled at that. Well, she wasn't good enough. Really, Kate? What did she ever do to you? She is a lovely person, and all she did was agree to go out with me. You were fucking Loverboy when we were married, and I never slagged him off. But well done, you have scared her off, worried about my psycho ex-wife and kids. I winced, realizing I had said all of that and sworn in front of the kids. Both Amy and Jack looked shocked. That information seemed to be a revelation to them. I turned to Kate, and another thing, thanks to Turner rubbing lack of funds in my face, I checked with the child maintenance agency. They reckon I should have offset the mortgage against some of the child support, so you can expect an assessment and revision. Maybe Loverboy can step up and pay towards my house that he seems to be living in. Amy piped up and looked at her mom. Dad still paying. Her voice trailed off, and Kate was back to her goldfish impression. The kids didn't look much brighter. It didn't look like I was going to get a response out of any of them. I stood up in frustration yet again, mumbled something about letting me know, and left. I was back at my pokey flat, wondering if I could afford to move. I neglected to mention to Kate that my lawyer advised me to keep going with the mortgage payments and reduce the child support. It guaranteed a roof over my kids' heads, but he reckoned it might turn out to be a good investment as property prices were skyrocketing. And once Jack left home in a few years, she would either have to sell or buy me out. My phone rang. It was Amy. I braced myself, wondering what the next tribulation in my life would be. I answered, and Amy, with Jack on speaker, spoke hurriedly. We've worked out we owe you 6 weekends and 4 weeks of vacation. We wondered if you'd still want to do that tour through Europe this summer, and could include the Black Forest, see the Alps, and travel down through Italy. Her words poured out in a nervous jumble. You remember those places? Of course, we talked about it for years, and it should be a lot warmer than Scotland. And Dad, well, we're sorry about how we acted. Mom never mentioned that it was her who cheated. We thought it was you and that it must have been with Marie. And Paul made it sound like he was paying for everything after you just left us. I don't care, as long as I can get my kids back again. Jack joined in. You're wrong about Paul. We don't really like him. He's a prick. I tried not to laugh. Honestly, I did. That's not the impression you gave, Jack. We thought that if you weren't seeing us, well, that you might come back. That's never going to happen, Jack. Things are over with me and your mom. She's moved on, but I want to be there for you both. Amy picked up for Jack. The thing is, Dad, we think Mom feels the same way. He isn't really here that much, but turns up if you're due to pick us up. They argue a lot, and it's often about you. I find that hard to believe. Your mom's been nothing but a well, she's been difficult to deal with since we split. I'd go as far as to say she hates me. I don't think so, Dad. I think she knows she made a mistake. I was sitting in Kate's Human Resources office at work, my nose busted, trying not to bleed all over what looked like an expensive carpet. Kate was furious when she saw me. Jesus, Jim, fighting at work? It's gross misconduct. I will have to dismiss you. What's the matter? Worried about losing out on the child support? It's pathetic, grown men fighting. You realize we had to call an ambulance for Bob. Good, he deserved it. I thought I did quite well considering there were 3 of them. Grow up, Jim. This is a total disaster. It's so bad the old man is coming in. Turner burst in then. I tried not to smile at his swollen lip and bruised cheek. He immediately started shouting that he and half of his team had been attacked, demanding the police be called and the assault reported, in addition to my instant dismissal. I looked at Kate. Do you want to know what actually happened before you sacked me? I mean, I thought that was your job, after all. A deep voice resonated across the room. I do. I turned to see Old Man Chisholm, the chairman and founder of Chisholm Engineering. He rarely attended the factory these days, but still had an imposing presence and a reputation to match. Weirdly, Josh was standing next to him. Turner launched into an explanation. It was an unprovoked attack in the canteen against me and 2 of my team. An unprovoked attack by one man taking on 3 seems a bit odd, don't you think? Is that what happened, Jim? Well, I probably swung first, but seeing as I was outnumbered, I wasn't going to wait about. I thought I saw Chisholm stifle a smile. Kate continued, we have no option but to dismiss you and call the police, Jim. You already threatened Paul, I heard it myself. Nothing justifies an assault. Aren't you going to ask what provoked it? I presume it's jealousy over my relationship with Paul. No, it's been months of harassment by him and the guys from his department. Paul was almost hyperventilating. That's total rubbish and just a pathetic excuse. Josh spoke up then. I can confirm everything Jim said is true. Paul looked at him with disdain. Who the fuck are you? If you know what's good for you, you'll keep your nose out of other people's business. Chisholm answered, Josh is my grandson, and I'd believe him all day long over someone like you. I got over my surprise and produced my phone, skipping back and pressing play. Hey Cucky, our boss was late in this morning. He was probably giving your missus a good seeing to. Everyone in the room got uncomfortable. I saw the look Kate gave Turner. I flicked back through the recordings. You do know she was fucking him for months before you separated. Did you know? Are you one of those cuck faggots that like to see your wife getting pipe laid into her? Kate's face turned crimson while Turner shouted, This is total bullshit. I skipped back again. The next voice was Turner's. It's a shame you were late for work all those times, Jim, and you didn't get the manager's role. I looked at Kate. Have you ever known me to be late for work, ever, in all the time we've been here? He blocked it and told me so, told me to move away as it would happen every time. I flicked forward to the recording from the canteen. It was Bob Marsden's voice. Paul says she's a great fuck and a right goer. Once he's broken her in, we're going to have a little party with all the boys. We might even be able to involve that cute little daughter of yours. The sound of scuffling and the fight followed before the recording cut off. It was the last comment I reacted to. You're still the mother of my kids, and the mention of Amy, well. Kate glared at Turner. He shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know that idiot Bob was going to say that. He was just trying to wind him up. Old man Chisholm spoke. Officially, everyone involved is suspended pending investigation and disciplinary hearings. Unofficially, Turner, get the fuck out of my building and take your cronies with you. Anyone calling the police will never work in the industry again. You were on borrowed time anyway, worst appointment I ever made. Don't even think about fucking with me, you will regret it. He nodded at a security guard outside the door who came in and then escorted Turner away. Chisholm turned to me. In light of everything, I'd say you handled it well, but you should have come to me. Go home, Jim, get cleaned up. Kate, we need to talk. I can't believe this type of behavior has gone unnoticed. Even ignoring your role in things, as HR director, you should have been aware of what was happening. Tears were rolling down Kate's cheeks. You do know it's not true, Jim. It wasn't months. It was once, and I regretted it as soon as it happened. I walked out with Josh and thanked him for both the backup and the advice, offering to buy him a pint or mini. I'd love to, but I have to travel for a regiment thing on Sunday. I usually just take myself off into the hills for some peace, but they've roped me in for something official. No trouble, next time then. And what's that about the old man being your granddad? I didn't like to broadcast it or take advantage. I was going to mention your troubles to him, but I figured you needed to find your own solution, and then I'd help. After all, he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. I started laughing. Now I know that one is an old army quote, if you count Shakespeare and Henry V. Josh chuckled. That's the one. Band of Brothers. They used it in officer training. It was a bit highbrow for the rest of us. Kate came to my flat that night. I let her in begrudgingly, asking what had happened with Chisholm. He confirmed Paul and the two involved in the fight are to be dismissed. Others in the team admitted to your harassment and stated Paul put them up to it. I was reprimanded and put on a final written warning. Are they going to the police about the fight? No, the guys admitted the harassment and want to keep it quiet. They are claiming it was just a disagreement that got out of hand. Did you speak to Turner, ask him why? He wanted rid of you because he thought I was still in love with you. He said the conversations were to make you snap and get you fired, but that you never took the bait. You just ignored them. Is he crazy? You don't cheat on someone, lie to them, and treat them like shit if you love them. You've treated me like crap for months. I would go as far as to say you even enjoy causing me pain. Kate started crying hysterically. None of this was supposed to happen. It was a mistake, then you weren't supposed to find out, and you weren't supposed to leave me. Everything possible went wrong. I thought if you missed the kids and your life was rubbish, you might give me another chance, but it didn't happen. Paul was more about trying to make you jealous than anything else. I don't have any real feelings for him. So you were a bitch because you wanted me back? Seriously. Take responsibility for your actions, Kate. You caused it all. I have no idea who you are. The woman I married would never have done those things. She was kind and caring. Where did she go? I messed everything up. When I realized you weren't coming back and with the divorce underway, I felt like I had to see it through. The kids, our friends, and my family wouldn't believe what I had done. John and Rob refused to be in the same room as us. I haven't seen their wives or families in months. I had to prove I could make it work with him, otherwise, I had thrown everything away for nothing. I had to justify my decision and make it seem like he was the better man. My life with Paul had to look perfect, and the more I put you down, the better my choices seemed. I tried to make it seem like a love affair, but it was never that. He was arrogant and selfish, but by then, there was no turning back. What a mess, and you involved the kids in all of that. I'm so sorry. I needed to try and fix things, but I didn't know how. I didn't realize how much it would damage your relationship with them. Another apology. I hear what you're saying. I'll change my actions so I don't have to keep apologizing. At least it's over with him now. He's gone, and I need you. So do the kids, they're really angry with me. I thought maybe we could try again. I've never stopped loving you. I couldn't believe it. I was so sure she hated me. It gave me pause for thought, but not for long. There's no way back, Kate. Not for me. The bond and trust we had are gone. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just trying my best to cope and get my life back on track. I met John and Rob for a pint on Sunday morning. They blasted me for not responding to all of their calls and texts. I tried to explain why. The wives were close, and Paul was Rob's brother after all. Rob laughed. He's no brother of mine. I haven't spoken to that prick since that night in the pub. It's probably for the best, otherwise, I would knock his block off. John explained that the wives hadn't seen much of Kate initially, but they were back in touch now and saying Kate regretted everything. She thought if she hadn't started seeing Paul again and had been more reasonable, we might have gotten back together. I wasn't sure about that, but I was sure it was good to talk to friends again. We had begun catching up on other aspects of our lives when I glanced up at the TV screen. There, in the full dress uniform of the Royal Fusiliers, was Josh, laying a wreath at the cenotaph in front of royalty and dignitaries. He wore an array of medals on his chest. I turned up the sound to hear the commentary explaining how Josh had earned the Victoria Cross, rescuing fellow Fusiliers under heavy fire, repeatedly returning despite danger, until being knocked unconscious by a rocket-propelled grenade. They continued, detailing his challenges during recovery. I was stunned. I had no idea about Josh's ordeal, putting my own struggles into perspective. Contrary to the rumors, life became quite good once Kate's attitude improved. I saw the kids more than scheduled, enjoying sports and events together informally. They stayed whenever they wanted and always seemed happy to be with me. The child maintenance service reduced my payments, following their mortgage offset suggestion. I received a promotion at work and a substantial bonus. Chisholm mentioned avoiding potential harassment claims or constructive dismissal cases as reasons for recognition. I rekindled old hobbies and planned future travels. I was taken aback when Marie showed up at my new cottage. We hadn't spoken in months, and I didn't think she knew where I lived. I cautiously invited her in. I'm here because of Amy and Jack, Jim. They apologized and explained everything. Amy mentioned you weren't seeing anyone. How did they even get your number? I suspect Kate gave it to them. I called her, and she confirmed what the kids said. She accepts that both of you need to move on. Things were becoming surreal. It seems both your kids and ex-wife think you're the best thing since sliced bread and that I'd be a fool not to date you. Sliced bread? Seems a bit much, don't you think? Maybe the best thing since the steam engine, though, sorry, it's an engineering thing. I'd have to go with the calculator or computers. I'm an accountant, after all. Either way, I'd like to find out for myself, Jim. Yeah, I'd like that too, Marie. Very much. We started dating again, and our relationship blossomed. It began with friendship and companionship, then grew into passion and intimacy, things that money can't buy. Who knows where we'll end up, but so far, things are going well. Was it just luck? Maybe. But I'd like to think I stopped being a victim and started taking charge of my life. I stopped accepting the nonsense others threw at me and learned to stand up for myself again. The results have been great so far. I'll never take that for granted. Life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel not to miss new videos.